Hello, in this episode we're going to start looking at Unreal with PlayFab, and we're going to be looking to create and get user characters. So in the previous episode we were looking at registration and login. So we were able to register a user, we're able to log in as a user, which provides us authentication context and PlayFab ID, and this now allows us to call subsequent API calls and do stuff, right? So in this post, we're specifically going to be looking at creating new characters and getting those characters, as well as looking at custom information. So the characters that we create are modular, so we're going to have additional information that we want to save as part of the character data. And so we're going to basically use this update character data, right? So as usual, this post includes all the information on how to achieve what we're doing here. And I've also referenced the documentation on the API calls that we're using. So let's get started with a quick demo. We basically had a look at this in the previous episode, but test user 3 and password. So we're able to basically log in, and now we're also going to be able to create a new character. So let's go ahead and create some new character. I give it some name, so test character 7. Let's create it, and there it is populated over here, right? So we're not going to be able to log in yet. We've not looked into that, but what you can see here is that I've logged in and I'm calling the API to get account characters. After I fetch this, I also get custom character data, which has all of the appearance information, and then that's how I basically unify all that data and render the correct stuff on the screen. So before I go into the implementation, we can basically have a quick look into PlayFab as well. So once you register inside PlayFab, you're going to be able to effectively create a game, right? So you can call it tenancy, right? So basically each game is going to be tenanted, and the data is not going to be shared between them. So inside this one, I can go ahead and look for the player. So the player represents the login in this case. So you can see there's my test user that I've created when we were looking at login. And now we're also going to be able to, so this is the base account details. And then I'm also going to be able to look at characters. So this is the new API that I've used to grant characters to that player. So I'm looking at sort of creating different characters for the player. Let's see, this is the new character that I've just created, test char 7. And inside there, we're going to be using custom data, which are stored under title data. And this is where I've put my appearance information. So you could basically put any custom data that you require onto these fields, and you're able to set them, to get them, whatever you need to do with them inside Unreal Engine. So there's a lot more data here, but that's the ones that I'm going to be focusing on in this post. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so perhaps we'll get started with create character widget flow. And this is because we want to have a character created when we select it. So yeah, let's go through this one first, and then we'll look at how does select character work as well. So let's go inside here. So this widget represents a create character screen. So you can see this is the screen over here. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the entirety of this widget. It's relatively complicated, and it was covered in some other episodes in the past, but basically it's how you create a modular character, how you can change the appearance information on that modular character. I can link the post in the description, which covers this if you're interested. And in this episode, we're specifically looking at the API comms with PlayFab. So assuming you already have your character creation screen sort of ready, you have the data that you wish to save, this is sort of the entry point here. So we've got this call create character with PlayFab. So you can see, find references, you can see that it's called when I click create. So basically when I click create button over here, I'm going to be gathering all the information from the character creation screen, and then I'm going to be sending it to PlayFab. So yeah, let's have a look at what happens. So the first thing that I'll do is update the authentication variables. So this is what we get out of the login screen. So when you log in, you get yourself this login info, and what we did was we stored it inside the game instance. So now all we want to do is get that back, right? So we get the game instance and we cast it to the game instance, we get the login info, and in this case I am interested in the PlayFab ID and the authentication context, so I just put that as a local variable essentially, just so that I don't need to basically do this again, right? It's just refactored. But you can do that, of course, if you wish. So let's go back to here. So we've updated the authentication variables, which we know must be populated because to get to the screen, you must go past the login screen. So the next thing that we want to do is basically call this endpoint grant character to user. And this is basically create character for user, right? And in order to do that, you have to make this request. So again, just drag out the request, click make, and this is how you get this structure. And what we want to populate here is the character name, the character type. So don't worry too much about this get tag value, but that's just how I get myself the class. And then the other things that you'll need are the PlayFab ID and the authentication context, which we've just extracted out of update auth variables, right? So I'm not even sure if you actually need to specify character type, but you can add it statically if you like for now, you know, if you're doing a test, or link it to whatever your variables are. So again, we're just looking at the API communications in this post. So once you've created this request and you've put it into here, we're basically going to get one of two responses. It's either going to be successful or it's going to fail. If it's successful, that's good. And this creates a character for the user, but it doesn't actually populate it with custom fields. So you could see here, there is no custom fields parameters on this request. You see custom tags, but in the documentation, this shows it to be like build numbers, external trace identifiers, etc. So this is not really designed to contain things like custom character parameters, right? If you had versioned APIs, you might specify the API version used here. So this is not really the same as custom parameters. So we're not using custom tags here basically, right? So when you finish creating the character, you're actually going to need to assign appearance information or whatever else you've got to that character, right? And that's going to be a different API call. So we'll jump on to that shortly. First, we'll look at what happens when we have an error. And all we're going to do is basically take the error, grab the error message, and then handle it by creating the error widget. So we've looked at this in the past. All we do is create this error message widget and add that to the viewport. So have a look into the login video if you're not familiar with this. This is pretty small. But yeah, so let's go back to the event graph. So now if we're successful, we've created the character, we get the response, and the response contains the character ID. So the next thing that we want to do is assign the appearance information. So let's have a look at us doing that. So I've also called this update authvars. So you don't actually need to do that because we've literally just done that. In fact, I'll just remove it. And what we want to do is get the appearance info into the PlayFab JSON. So the API calls, they accept basically JSON objects. So our appearance structure is a Unreal Engine structure, and we just want to convert it to JSON, right? So that's what this helper will do. So I've created a new helper method. This is very similar to what I did in the custom server implementation. So you can see that I had these VA REST helpers, and you know, like, look, there's a struct to VA REST, and this is literally doing something very similar, but instead of PlayFab JSON, it's converting it to VA REST JSON. So it's very similar approaches, basically, regardless of what kind of way you're going, I suppose. So let's have a look for PlayFab helpers. So this is our PlayFab helpers. So you can see I've created a separate class just so I can reuse it potentially in the future. And yeah, let's have a look at what we do. So we get ourselves the character appearance structure. We set it locally and we construct this JSON object. So this is, you can see it's written there, PlayFab JSON object. And then for each of the fields inside the appearance info, we're going to go ahead and set that field inside the JSON, right? So you can see me getting the race from appearance, the gender from appearance, the hairstyle from appearance, and you can see me setting those manually inside the JSON object. And once I'm done, I'm returning that out again. So it's pretty simple. It's a bit tedious, not going to lie. But it is doing something pretty simple. It's converting your structure into JSON, right? So these are serializers. Okay, so that's what this one does over here. And then I make the request. So the request requires me to put in the character ID. So I promoted it to a variable over here. So you could actually add it as an input parameter there as well. So you can do that if you like. And then I get the PlayFab ID and the authentication context. Again, we've already populated those out of the game instance. So that's our request, and then I send it to update character data. So again, this is the PlayFab function, and we're going to get one of two responses. It's either going to be successful, in which case we simply navigate to the character select screen. And if it failed, we actually need to roll our changes back, right? So there's not really any good reasons for this to fail. It could be a network blip. It could be, you know, something else, but like usually a technical error, I suppose. So if that does occur, you've actually created a character, but you've never assigned it some custom parameters, which sort of means that it will be in this glitchy state. So you do want to roll that back. So I'm going to log the error here. So I want to find out why did it fail. And after that, I'm going to go ahead and try to delete the character from the user, right? So we have the character ID. We've just populated it earlier. We have the PlayFab ID and the authentication context locally. So we create the request to delete the character, and then we try and delete it. If it's successful, this means it's good, right? So you can see I put it onto handle error, create character failed. Please try again. So usually it could be a network glitch, so it should be safe to retry. And you know, if it's failing again, you should ask them to contact support, for instance, inside the message. And if it actually failed to delete the character, this is like not a good thing. That means that you're going to have a character that's created and it doesn't have all of the custom data, so it's going to be in this weird glitchy state basically. So you want to show the error message to the user, but basically there might need to be a manual intervention to fix this problem. So yeah, like basically this is not a good case scenario, but it is worth mentioning. Okay, so after you've created the characters, this actually completes the create character flow. You created the character, you've taken some custom data, you've updated the custom data for that character, and if it's successful, you're going to navigate back to the character select screen, so we can start looking into that now. Okay, so the next thing that we'll look at is the select character widget. So here, again, we're not going to be looking too much into the design. And we're again going to be focusing more on the API communications between PlayFab and Unreal. So you can see there's going to be a bunch of stuff that's happening. And most of it is consistent to before. You know, I can link again where I've been creating some of these screens. But the main thing is that we had API comms with a custom server, and now we're going to be replacing them with PlayFab API comms. So if I basically search references here, you can see that I'm calling my fetch characters from PlayFab on the event construct. And that's how I basically get things in line. So these are pretty universal approaches, and we're just basically changing the server from where we get the data. Okay, so let's see what we do. So the first thing that we do is make sure that our authentication variables are set. So this is the same as create character screen. We just get the PlayFab ID and authentication context from the login info, which is stored inside the game instance. So that's what we do first. And then we make a call to get all user characters. And for that, we just need to basically create this request, which takes in the PlayFab ID and authentication context. So it knows what player we're on based on this authentication context. So that's how you tell PlayFab, you know, get this player's characters, right? And then if you have a failure, again, we just basically take that error message and provide it back to the user. So we create this error message widget, and it's not really any good reason for this to fail, by the way. We just need to make sure that it's handled. And then on success, what we want to do is actually start fetching the custom characters for each one of those characters, right? Sorry, custom data for each one of those characters. So as you can see, when you break this result out, you get like an array of characters, and these characters don't actually contain custom data assigned to those characters. So you need to request for it. So in order to make that request, we're first going to generate that request. So that's what this one does. So the response contained an array of characters. So for each one, we have this response JSON. I'm not entirely sure why, but they didn't put this into a Unreal Engine structure. So we have to manually extract it out. So one thing that you might want to do potentially, like as you're debugging this or whatever, is you can do encode JSON, and then you can maybe print string to the screen. So basically just print the output out, so you can see what's going on in that data. This might make it a bit easier to work with, but this data is in the documentation, so you can check that out. You know, that's obviously a good place to start. So anyway, this JSON contains character name and character ID, and to make the request, we need the PlayFab ID, authentication context, and this character ID. So you're basically saying, get custom character data for this character ID. So that's the main thing that we want to do. The other thing that we do is add a map of character ID to character name, because when we get a response back, we just want to tie this information together. And you're going to see us doing that a bit later. Okay, so the other thing that we have to specify here is the keys that you wish to get. So I think I showed it here, but these are the keys that we stored previously, right? So this is part of my appearance data. So I have some keys for facial feature, gender, hair color, hairstyle, etc. So these are the keys that you can specify here. And yeah, that's your request done basically. You then make the call to get character data, and you specify that request. And again, this happens for each character that you call, that you have. So if you have 5 account characters, you're going to make this call 5 times. So you can expect to get 5 responses back as well, right? So on failure, again, we always just simply handle error by providing the error message back to the screen. And on success, we want to process the character data response. So we put the response into here, into the input, and let's basically break it out. So you have this character ID and then the data. What we want to do to align it with the work that I've done before is create this account character structure. So let's have a quick look into account character. So you can see that I have this name, account name, and appearance info. And the main thing that we need is basically this name and appearance info. We don't actually use this account name at this stage. And appearance info. I think it's actually called character appearance. Okay, there it is. And this is the character appearance structure. So again, you can see it contains all of those fields that I've shown earlier. So if I go back to select character widget, so you can see this is what I'm trying to do here. Part of the create character flow, we took a structure and we converted it to JSON. And now what we need to do is the inverse of that. We're getting back this JSON data from PlayFab and we want to convert it to appearance info. So that's what this one does. And again, this is inside the helper that we've added over here. So PlayFab helpers. There's going to be one for PlayFab JSON to appearance info, so that's what we're looking at. We get this JSON, we just set it locally, and we create this appearance structure. And then for each of the keys that we expect to see, so you can see here, I'm getting a string value for race, gender, hairstyle, etc. And I'm getting that from the appearance data that's in JSON. I'm then populating all of the members of this character appearance structure. And when I'm done, I just return that back. Okay, so that's what we're doing. It's the inverse of what we did in the character create screen. So we just need these helpers, you know, to serialize the data between JSON and structures. So they can be a bit tedious, but they are relatively straightforward. And yeah, like it would be great if there was some automated way of doing them, to be honest. But yeah, now we have everything that we need. We've basically got this account character, which contains the character name, and it also contains the appearance information for that character. So then we add that onto the array of account characters and we redraw the select options. So this actually takes us back to some of the flows that we've created in the past, but all it does is basically redraws the options. I'm going to display them here. Test 3. So you can see that it does it one at a time as well, by the way, right? So again, we might make a call to get account characters. We'll get 3 back at the same time. And then for each one of those, we say get custom data. And those are basically async calls. So each time we get a response out of those, we process it, we convert the JSON to appearance info struct, we add it into the account characters, and then we say redraw this screen. What that will do is for each of the account characters objects, we create this button, and then the name contained the character name, so that's rendered over here. And then there's also appearance information. So every time you click this button, it then renders or re-renders the character mesh specifically with the appearance info that we've specified. And that's it for the character selection screen. So you can see us now integrating with a different, well, with PlayFab. And soon we'll be able to log in and do some other cool stuff. So yeah, thanks for that. Any questions, do let me know, and see you next time. Bye.